Hello folks. Now today I'm building the dam that you guys don't give, as we're going to be doing some sort of video game reviewing blog. I rarely ever do these. In fact, I've only done it once in the past. That's not to say I haven't blogged about video games before. Heck no. I've done that a crap ton. But doing a review of a game, that kind of only works if you actually see the game, right? Behemoth Vlogmaster is just like a visual podcast. It's one of those things you can just listen to in your car and not even look at. Like you just put it on a playlist or something. And the only time I did it before was because I did a separate series for video game review blogs, but then I was like, what the hell's the point? So I just combined it with BBM. So why am I doing this, especially now, when we've already established that Behemoth Vlogmaster has definitely taken a different path than it used to 3 years ago? Well, I have two reasons. For one of my co-workers, who I'm going to leave anonymous for now, has lost a member. Yeah, I know, it sucks and it's one of those things, but I don't know if he's in the mood for watching Kale-Idle-Scope videos right now, and even if he is, I don't know if this is going to make him feel any better, but at least he'll know, that is if he's watching, that we're there for him, and that I took the time out of my BBM schedules, or whatever you want to call it, to dedicate an episode to him. It's not about him, but it's about one of his favorite sports, Frolf, ladies and gentlemen, which is a frisbee golf hybrid. We'll get to what that means later, but the other reason I'm doing this is because we're basically having a plague. Like, damn. Have you not noticed how many freaking sports games have been created in this world? Think about it. It's just so massive. Like, it takes up probably at least 2/3 of the whole gaming library. I am baffled on how they get away with making so much the same crap. That's not to say that a lot of them are bad, it's just the same basic crap, and there's nothing special about it. There are way too many basketball games alone. That's not even counting all the other sports. How many sports are you just trying to get a ball or whatever to the opposite side of the field? There's basketball, football, soccer, and hockey. And all of those have an overabundance of games that are all the same freaking thing. I understand maybe making a few of these games, but they are oversaturating the market. I'm surprised the second video game crash hasn't happened yet because of it. So the point is, I'm making this episode because there's a game that actually dared to take a risk and try even the slightest bit of creativity in this genre of video game. That game, my friends, Ribbit King. It's kinda hard to see with the glare, but it was a very early Christmas present, and yeah, I opened it on the 3rd, 22 days before Christmas. I was that freaking curious about this game. Ribbit King is one of those games I've heard of vaguely before, because believe me, I've heard of a crap ton of games. But I didn't think much about it until I saw Marcus, who I've mentioned in episode 111 of Behemoth Vlogmaster. He's a streamer that just streams games and crap. He was playing it with some buddies. And once I actually saw what the game was about, it blew my mind. Somebody actually tried something different. This is like the most creative game of its genre. It's definitely up there. I know NBA Jam was pretty cartoonish, and I guess that kind of gave it some charm over all the other sports games. But this is almost like it's Pikmin, but for golf. My mom had to break a skull, a spine, and a shin to get this thing, as it was $185 online. I offered to pay for some of it because, you know, I have money, but she said, nah, don't worry about it. So whatever, I'm not going to complain about that. And you know what? This is probably a game that I'm going to forget about in the next few months, if I'm being honest. I'm not trying to be an asshat, but it's probably the truth. I'm sure I'll plop it in every now and then, but, you know, it's just one of those games that doesn't stick with you for a long time, you know what I mean? Also, I was in the middle of playing Metal Gear Solid 2, and I decided to stop playing that, at least for now, just so I can test this game out to make episode 120. That was quite the sacrifice, I might add. Now, I would like to know more about this Ribbit King. What in the heck is it? Like, it must be so revolutionary that you have to dedicate a whole episode to it. I'd like to know more about how this game works. I guess we'll start with the least important, which is the plot. The plot is as basic as you can get. It's definitely down there. You see, you play as this kid named Scooter. Well, I mean, in story mode you do. Basically, the king of some planet asks him to go get more fuel for the planet, which they call Ribbonite. And that's how it starts off. You gotta go win Froth tournaments to get the rewards to get that so-called Ribbonite to save the planet. I noticed that the Scooter Kid is voiced by the same guy who voices Butters from South Park. I'm pretty sure. In fact, that black alien thing is voiced by another guy from South Park. I don't remember the name of the character, but the closest thing I got is Big Gay Al. But we're not here to talk about South Park, we're here to talk about this game. I think it's finally time I quit leaving you in suspense. What in the world is Froth? It's very similar to golf, except it's not always about just trying to get to the hole in as little shots as possible. Throughout each level, there's an abundance of all sorts of things that get you points. Whether it be bubbles, obstacles, flies, or snakes, you can rack up some pretty high points. After every round where you decide not to go straight to the hole will give you less points than the previous round. Like if you get a hole-in-one, or a frog-in-one, it'll get you about 1,500 points. It's a crap ton of points, but you could either do that or just grind for points and see if you can get more points than you would if you just went straight for the hole, you know what I mean? And after about 8 rounds, the level is automatically over. You can still keep the points that you get throughout the level, but it's probably recommended that you try to find a good balance between doing that and going for the hole, if you get what I'm saying. I know it's kind of hard to understand. Now, most of these cartoony-ass games have some sort of, like, power-ups, items, whatever you want to call it, and this game's no exception. I haven't figured out what every item in the game does, or at least I haven't memorized it. But you can bring a total of about 5 with you in a match. Stuff like letting your frog fly further, or maybe making your curve tighter. So if there's like a big ass tree in your way, you can just curve it stronger to make sure you get around the tree instead of, running into it. Because if your frog gets hurt, you will lose points. And I think that leads us to the combos. These get quite interesting. What happens in regular golf if your ball goes in the water? You would have to start over, right? Like you'd have to do that turn all over again. In this game, though, if your frog goes in the water, it'll swim. And every time it swims, like every stroke or whatever, you get points for that. And there's this one planet in the game, which is a world basically, where there's this huge freaking lake. And if you just let the frog start from one end to the other, you can rack up on some serious points. However, the points increase after every obstacle. For example, if your frog lands somewhere after hopping a few times, and it sees a fly, it'll hop to that fly and get more points. If it goes to another fly, it'll double the points. After every major obstacle that happens in your turn, the point counter will increase, basically. It's kind of hard to describe, but I think I made myself clear enough. Except for swimming in the water. If you go through an obstacle, instead of getting 1 point after every stroke, you get like 2. Maybe next you'll get 3. It doesn't double, it just goes up by 1. But unfortunately, like any video game, there is an abundance of weird decisions and flaws in it. We were just talking about frogs swimming in water. Apparently they can also swim in the lava. Because on planet Lavatron, the lava world, my frog landed in the lava and it swam in it as if it were just water. But then after hopping out of the lava and then going back into it, it starts burning up and crap. It starts jumping all over the place like it's hurt. Apparently there is an item that allows frogs to swim in lava. It's some sort of ice cube thing or whatever, but I didn't equip that. How can you be that inconsistent? Either the frogs can swim in lava or they can't. Don't do both. On the same turn at least. That'd be like if you banged your head against the table and it didn't hurt the first time, but then doing it a second time, it hurts as if you did it the first time. Like, I don't get it. In fact, another issue would be the snakes. In certain spots in each level, there are snakes that will bite your frog and start shaking it around in its mouth. You can move the yellow C-stick to try to wrangle yourself out of the snake, which is fine, and that's good too, because if you don't do that, you'll lose points, right? But I noticed that you can also do it on another person's turn. I am not kidding. What I mean is that if somebody else gets bit by a snake and is getting shaked around, you have the option to jiggle your C-stick and have their frog escape from that snake. I'm assuming this function was not implemented correctly and they didn't quite get it to work and maybe they kind of forgot about it. But the point is, why the hell would I care if my opponent loses points? Isn't the whole idea that I'm trying to beat them? Why would I save them from a snake when I'm trying to get more points than them? So obviously you'll probably just want to not shake it at all unless it's your turn. You might be saying, Kale, you're full of crap, that's not how it works, there's no way they could release the game like that, but I did it myself, twice in fact. And you can shake the C-stick on other people's turns and have it affect their turn. You'd think the AI would be handling that itself, if you're playing with a computer. But this game doesn't have the greatest AI. Every time I saw a computer player play, it always shoots its frog in the very first spot that it looks at. What I mean is it doesn't move its camera to look in any other direction to try to get points. At the beginning of every player's turn, you automatically face the hole, and they just shoot the frog at whatever direction they're facing. I've never once seen it move the camera. That's kinda unacceptable. I mean, I know it's luck-based and skill-based at the same time, and I have lost rounds to AI before. In fact, no. The only time I've played this game was with AI. I've never actually played it with a real human being yet. But even still, there's no excuse. The AI should know everything about the game and how it can win. All it does is launches the frog, and the rest is just up to chance. One more complaint I have is that, at least to my knowledge, you cannot access the tutorial after you've left it the first time. I was pretty confused as to how the curves worked, and I was able to figure it out myself, but it still would have been nice to have access to that tutorial. I could be wrong, but I kind of checked, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to access it after you've exited it. Even with all these issues in the game, it's still pretty fun actually. I might like it more than Mario Party, at least the GameCube ones. My favorite stage would probably have to be Planet Frosticle, which the music that you're hearing right now comes from that world. Some people would probably say it's Hypnotron because of the low gravity and your frog can really go out there, but I'm not some people, I'm just me. So, I think I've done a decent enough job summing this game up, but there's more to it than that. In the copy I have received, there are 2 discs. And one of them is a collection of video clips that you can look at after having unlocked them in the story mode. To put it simply, they weren't really worth my time. I didn't have that much interest in watching them. I watched a few just for the sake of making this episode, just so we can clarify this, but even if these clips were worth it, making videos as some sort of like reward, so completing every mission in a game or as an unlockable or something, that would not work these days because anybody can just look up the footage on YouTube. If you want to give the players some sort of bonus or reward, make sure it's actually beneficial to the gameplay. Making some sort of like special ending or something like that, they can just cheat and Google it. Yeah, I know this is an old school game, it's for the GameCube in 2004, but I'm just saying that would not work these days. So I don't think I'm gonna bother with watching these. So in conclusion, yeah, Bandai did a pretty good job with making this game creative and not a typical platformer or kart racer or whatever. They actually tried something different with the cartoony universe. Is it the best of its genre? Like, is it the best sports game? I mean, compared to everything else that exists, that is all just the same freaking thing, or mostly at least, it's definitely one of the better ones, but there's no denying, it's one of the most creative of its genre. And I don't see why that many people aren't talking about it these days. This could be a revolution right here. I don't know why this isn't brought up in people's discussions of influential video games. Sure, it's not a masterpiece, it's not like a perfect, greatest game ever material, but come on, all they needed to do was be creative. And that's what they did. And it didn't take that much creativity to make a sports game that is different from the majority of the sports games that exist in this world. So do yourself a favor, if you like all sorts of sports and you want to get into them, and if you also like video games, you might want to try this out actually. It ain't half bad. With that said, this is Kale-Idle-Scope, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.